Hey folks, Kevin Thomas here, and I want to talk about snobbery, especially when it comes to music. All right, so let's say you have two guitar players. All right, so you go to a local club or bar or whatever, and you see a couple bands that pop up during the night. And the first band, the lead guitarist, it's a rock band, and the lead guitarist is so skilled that in the middle of their set, he starts playing a note perfect version of Eruption. He gets up there and he's playing. It's like, God rest his soul, Eddie Van Halen is just channeling through this guy, and he's playing note perfect, amazing display of skill. Then the second band comes up, and they're a complete antithesis, technically speaking. And they get up, and maybe the guitarist is the only guitarist in the band, and maybe he's playing, power chords, or maybe he's playing, maybe three or four chords the entire song. And then maybe you see another song that he plays, and he's only playing three or four chords in that song. There is the possibility that in the case of sitting there and listening to both bands that night, that you find something that you connect with on both levels. But, at times I'll look at music posts on social media, and you'll hear these people saying, oh, well, this guitarist doesn't really know their instrument. And what they're saying is not necessarily that the person can't play music, but they can't play music as technically gifted as this other guitarist. And almost in a sense of like, if they can't play it with this kind of speed or precision or whatever else, then they really shouldn't be up there at all. And what I find funny is that it usually comes from people that they themselves couldn't write a song to save their lives. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that at all really in a detrimental or derogatory way, but to say that the person that's making that criticism, it's almost in a sense like, if you can't play that instrument in a way that I literally, like, if I picked up a guitar, I couldn't play that way either, then that tells me that you're a real musician. You also have the musicians who are incredibly technically gifted, and they'll put down a guitarist and say, well, and you see these posts all the time on social media where one guitarist is talking about why he hates another guitarist. It's like, what's the point of that stuff? Like, I really don't see that. Like, okay, I'll give you another example when it comes to singing. Like, people speak all day about Freddie Mercury, and rightfully so. To me, he may be the greatest singer that rock has ever known. That when it comes to his range, when it comes to the way that he sings, the way that he evokes emotion through his technical ability of vocals, it's unparalleled. I don't think anybody even comes close to the impact or the emotional reach that his voice had. Then you look at someone like Bob Dylan, whose voice has kind of changed throughout the years. Like even going back to the days of like a Rolling Stone, or Blonde on Blonde, and then going into Nashville Skyline and how he approached the vocal differently, and then as he gone through the 80s, it was almost like he lost his voice and he had to find it again, kind of like he described in his book Chronicles Volume 1, where there was this period of time where he couldn't find his voice, and then he had to find a different way of expressing himself vocally. And he's still to this day alive, thank God, and still creating music and creating music that means something. But I've heard at times people say, well, I can't listen to that artist because their voice just, and everybody feels something different with the music, and that's fine. But I guess what I'm getting to with this video, especially when it comes to other musicians, we shouldn't be putting down a musician because of what we perceive to be their technical ability. Think about it this way. when you look at a band like Rush or Yes, and when you look at a band like the Ramones, obviously, in terms of the technical ability that they show on stage, there is a difference. But those entities musically were still able to make music that was so anthemic that, 50, 100 years from the time they leave this earth, people will still be listening to their songs because it means something to them. You know, and yeah, some people will listen to the Ramones and they just won't feel it. That's fine. That's fine. But to put them down because, they're not up there, playing a Jimmy Page tune or whatever, to me, that doesn't make sense. To me, every single human being, regardless of the gifts that are given in this world, has a unique imprint, a unique fingerprint on what they bring to the table, regardless of whatever industry they work in, or if you put two human beings that work in the same industry, they may even have similar ideals as far as what they get out of what they're doing, but they will still have their own unique imprint in how to do it. So to me, in the case of like I'll give you an example. I've had people put me down, and not even just musicians, but non-musicians, that'll put me down because they see me up on stage using a capo. I'll tell you honestly, I use the capo because I have short fingers. There's some guitarists with really long fingers and they could do all these intricate chord shapes. I don't literally have the physical ability to do that, so I will use the capo to sort of vary things, or I will detune or try different tunings to vary things, so that I can play the chords that I hear in my head and make things sound the way that I'm imagining it when I'm doing my original material. I don't think that's a bad thing, but you will literally have people, even in the audience, that will be like, oh, he's using a capo, he doesn't really know how to play. And it's like, yeah, but when I actually do the song that you're about to hear me play, how do you feel after hearing that song? Are you thinking about, oh, he's using a capo? Or are you thinking, what is he saying in the song? How is he putting it together? All that stuff. To me, that makes no sense. To like, oh, he's using a capo, or oh, he's only playing in standard tuning, or oh, he's using that guitar over this guitar, or you know what I mean? You have some people, and again, it's fine to have your opinions about stuff. I'm just talking about more of putting someone down because they're not matching what you believe their ideals for music making should be. Like, I'm not going to put down a hip hop artist because they took a sample from back in the 70s and then created another musical idea off of that. Like when you think about, something like Das Effects doing They Want Effects. It's a killer song, period. Regardless of where they got, like they're using a James Brown sample. But they took that musical idea and branched something completely different off of it, which is perfectly fine. To me, that's akin to, Jeff Beck listening to classical music and then, coming up with Beck's Bolero or something. It's the same thing. The music has to come from somewhere. It's like the people that'll say, well, country music is white music. Really? If you look at the history of country music, there's roots from all sorts of places there, especially when you're talking about a musical style that predominantly came out of the South. You have black influences, especially when it comes to the use of the banjo. You also have Latin influences, especially when it comes from the music that came out of Mexico. That was all part of the deal. Look at the melting pot that is New Orleans and the music that's come out of there. When you talk about an Alan Toussaint or you talk about a Dr. John and all the melding of styles that made that music. But I digress. I just think that you know, especially if you're a musician, especially if you're a creator of music, um, there's no need to put someone down because they can't play a solo as well as you can. Like that kind of snobbery doesn't make sense to me. You know, Harlan Howard, Three Chords and the Truth, you know, he and so many other songwriters in the country and Americana and alt country and country rock and I mean like would you put down Graham Parsons because he's not up there shredding like a mofo? You know what I mean? You can feel something from the music regardless of how many notes a person can play per second. Um, and it's not to say that if you're technically gifted that your music shouldn't be applauded. Like listen to a song like Samba Pati that Santana did back in the day. I think that came off of Abraxas, if I'm not mistaken. But that song is just amazing. You can hear the spirituality in that song. You can hear God in that song. Carlos is an amazing player. But at the same time, I can listen to songs done in the punk world, or I can, listen to songs that, like I said, might have 3 or 4 chords to it. I mean, some of the best country music that I've heard in the last 30 years. I mean, Mark Chestnut's up there, strumming, 3, 4 chord songs, but you're feeling something from it. And I think that's ultimately what I'm getting at is that, it doesn't matter whether a guitarist uses a capo or stays in standard tuning or whether they're playing 50 million chords in 3 minutes or whether they're playing 3 chords in 5 minutes. At the end of the day, whether you're a songwriter, whether you're a singer, whether you're an instrumentalist of some type, at the end of the day, it really should be about whether that music connects with you. It's like I said, I've said a few times over, it's not about whether a song is a good song or a bad song. To me, we shouldn't think along those lines. We should think about whether we connect with it or we don't. Because, it's not even to say, let's be super sensitive about what we say about other musicians, but it's more or less, especially if you're a musician and especially if you're a musician of name, putting down an artist, especially if they're an up and coming artist or even if they're an artist from back in the day that maybe young folks don't know the catalog of, you could be preventing people from discovering the music of an artist that could very well be very influential, not just if they happen to be musicians themselves, but just you could be preventing another artist from being discovered by another music listener. There's so much music out there. There's so much to discover, and I mean, I've been alive for over 45 years on this planet, thank God. Hopefully I get another 45 if I'm lucky. But I know that, even if I were to get another 45 years on this planet, there would still be tons of music out there that I will have never been able to hear. So I would say, to the musicians that make music, if you do have incredible technical ability, I would say as a challenge, look for the musicians that play it in a simplistic way and see if you can gather something out of that. Like look past how technical they are in their ability and try to see if you can derive something of meaning from what they're putting together. I mean, look at it this way. Bob Dylan puts out the song All Along the Watchtower, and he does it in a particular way that's compelling. Hendrix hears it and does his own version of it. Now, obviously, technically speaking, I mean, Hendrix, one of the greatest guitarists in rock history, of course, if not number one, takes it on another journey altogether. It is what it is. But you can even look at, something like, Leonard Cohen writing Hallelujah. and having all the instrumentation that he had in the production of it, and all the verses that he had, and then like Jeff Buckley or Rufus Wainwright put out a version in their own style, where even in Jeff Buckley's version there were a couple of verses from the Leonard Cohen version that didn't make his version, and some consider it to be the definitive version of that song. But I just think that and you know what, I'm gonna be honest about this. Years ago, I was probably a bit of a music snob, because I would always talk about, oh well, music isn't as good as it used to be, and I would stay stuck to listening to 60s, 70s music, rock, blues rock, singer-songwriter confessional stuff. And then lately I've been finding myself on Spotify listening to some of the pre-made playlists of stuff that's coming out now. And I realized how wrong I was. And I think that's ultimately why I'm making this video, is because I don't want other music listeners or creators of music to do what I used to do. So it's more of a cautionary tale, because now it's like I'm discovering music that was made even back when I was a teenager, a kid, that I had never given a chance to, because I had that snobbery within me. Like, oh, music should sound like this. And then I realized, wow, if I had opened the door to listening to this music back then, I would have totally looked at music completely differently throughout my journey. And who knows how that would have molded and shaped the music that I'm making throughout the years. So whether you can play, like whether you could physically play a solo of intricacy, note for note, or whether you barely know chords, whether you can barely play bar chords, like maybe you're at home and it's like, oh, that darn F chord, I just can't get it right. There are ways to play that F chord, without having to play it as a bar chord. I remember one time, this music listener walked up to me at right before this open mic began, and he's like, I see you use a capo, and he's like, you don't have to use a capo. Like, he's like, yeah, put the capo on the guitar. And I was like, all right. And he's like, yeah, make a G chord. So I do a G bar chord, and he's like, strum it. Okay, well, take the capo away. Strum it. See? You don't need a capo. And I wanted to stand there and explain to him why he was wrong about that. But I was like, no, I'm going to let him discover on his own. Whether you use a capo or not, regardless of what tunings you use, regardless if you're an incredible Travis picker, whether you know every possible scale out there, whether you know you're Lydian or Phrygian or whatever, you could know every extension chord in the book, or you could literally know C, F, and G. It doesn't matter. You could sing with a 3-octave range, or you could sing, with a range this small. You could be a bassist that plays like a Noel Redding, or you could be a bassist that plays like a Jack Bruce or a Geddy Lee. And you can still be a part of the equation that creates a song that people will listen to generations from now. Your technical ability or your musical knowledge, as much as it's important to know as much as you can about an instrument, but if you physically can't play a solo that fast, then that doesn't devalue who you are as an artist. Like, for example, you could be a painter and you could paint a Mona Lisa, or you could just paint an orange. You know what I mean? Or paint a stick figure and have it mean something to somebody. I just think that Plus, I'll tell you honestly, I've been in the audience where there's a guitarist that, technically, or there's a drummer that technically can play some really good stuff. And yet, for me, it was like I didn't connect to that as well as the guy that knows half as much as he does, but somehow gets more feeling out of it. Again, if you have an opinion about music and the way it should be done, sure. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, just like I am, just like you are out there. I'm just saying, let's be cautious about putting somebody down because they can't play communication breakdown or something. It shouldn't be about that. You go to the garages around the world, around the country especially. Um, like for example, go back to England back in the 50s and 60s and all the skiffle bands that were out there, and look what that um, like okay, Link Ray playing Rumble, one of Jimmy Page's favorite artists. And a number of guitarists will look back on that day that were alive back then, or that heard that song for the first time, heard the distortion coming over. Link Ray wasn't playing something that was tremendously intricate, but he kicked down and opened a door of possibility that other guitarists might not have thought of. And yet Link Ray wasn't playing something like a Chuck Berry was playing, or even a Les Paul when he was doing his stuff with Mary. Playing some amazing stuff. Django Reinhardt playing some incredible stuff. Django Reinhardt wouldn't have known that eventually he inspired someone like Tony Iommi to play as he played, given the circumstances with Iommi's fingers and whatnot. I mean, that whole story's amazing too. But, you can hear, look at, country music, folk music, there are guitarists that, maybe they were more intricate in their approach to how to play, whether it was alternate picking or Travis picking or whatever else. And there were some that just strummed their way through, but then could sing a beautiful song. Like me, I don't consider myself a player, a real guitar player, and I think when you look at the other videos that I've posted, I'm not that great a player at all. And I wouldn't even, I would not consider myself a true guitar player. I try to manipulate the guitar based on what I know right now, to try to make the songs, the original songs that I make. But I'm certainly not a clean player, and certainly not a fast player or even really inventive. I'm crap. No, I don't think I'm crap. And even with singing, I've only ever had one singing lesson, and it was more of a vocal coaching lesson. And I got to tell you, by the way, if you're a vocalist and you're looking for some solid lessons or solid coaching, check out Bethany Hickman. She goes by the name The Vocalist on YouTube. She has a great channel. On her channel, she'll analyze, and there's a few channels out there like this, but Bethany is particularly good. And I've only had one vocal coaching lesson from her. It's the only time I've ever taken lessons for my singing. Otherwise, it's just pretty much how I sing, just naturally. And not that I'm taking credit for anything, but just for example, it was taking that vocal coaching lesson with Bethany that where I actually found out that my voice actually has more than a 3-octave range, which I didn't know. And admittedly, I'm still trying to figure out how to reach the low end and the high end of that range. And God willing, I'll be able to take some more lessons from her. But even from that one lesson, I can tell you, when you look at the videos of her vocal analysis of various genres, that is a woman that knows what she's talking about. So check out Bethany Hickman, the vocalist. She's really good. Go to her website, get the lessons from her, because she's really, really good. But to me, I could be 90 years old, and I'm 45 now. Someday, God willing, I could be 90 years old, and I think even on my 90th birthday, I will still be learning how to use my voice in certain ways, or still learning things about the guitar. So I say this whole video basically to say, I don't consider myself much of a musician compared to others. There are musicians that are so technically gifted. There are singers that are so technically gifted, and they know a lot more about how to use their instrument than I know now. And that's not to say that I couldn't learn a thing or two from them. But I also know that there are some musicians that I've been to open mics with, that I've been to shows with, that they always talk about, oh, what an amazing voice I have, and oh wow, how do you come up with those songs and stuff like that? And yet I can hear songs that they do, and them sort of selling themselves short and thinking, oh, I can't play like this person or that person. It's like they don't realize that they've written songs or they've sung songs that I think are aces. I think they're amazing. And so the gist of this video basically is like, don't do like I used to do. Don't be a music snob. Regardless of your level of understanding of music theory or the way to use your particular instrument, or how you make your particular fingerprint on the musical world or the art world or whatever it may be, there's no need to put down people that, whether you think they're technically worse than you or whether they think so. Instead, as artists, we should remember that there was a point in time in our lives, whether it was yesterday or when we were kids, when we were first learning the instrument, there was a point in time when we did not have what we have now. We didn't have that ability at some point down the line, and then we eventually leveled up to a certain degree. I still have a lot to learn about music, about writing songs, about playing guitar and playing it cleaner and playing scales and all this other stuff. And God willing, I will have the ability and the time to be able to grow as a musician and as a person, personally, spiritually, professionally, what have you. I think it does come down to sort of the mentality that every day is a learning lesson. Even for someone that may know something very well, there's still something that you can learn from. You could be 80, 90 years old, and people who listen to what you do could think, wow, you've really perfected it. And I could see myself at that age, God willing, where I would be like, no, I haven't perfected anything. You know what I mean? Like, when I leave this earth, there's still going to be so much that I haven't done, that I wish I would have done, but it wasn't meant for me to do. There's still going to be music that I, unfortunately, would not have been able to hear. So I make it a point every day to listen to music that I otherwise would not have listened to years ago because I was being an idiot and not realizing that regardless of whether the musician knows a couple chords or a million of them, whether that singer has a big range or small range, there's something in that unique fingerprint of creativity and perspective that we can all learn from. And at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing, not just for art, but just in life. So thanks for indulging me on this ramble, and share your thoughts. Let me know what you think about all of this, if it was coherent in any way, shape, or form, if it makes sense to you, if it doesn't make sense to you. But I do want to end it by saying, look, you're entitled to your opinion as far as what you get out of music, what makes you feel connected to music, and I'm not saying that you're not. All I'm saying is, let's, regardless of our musical knowledge, regardless of what we can exhibit and how we can express ourselves musically or artistically or whatnot, let's foster a environment of support, regardless of what we think of someone's musical or technical ability. because you never know. You could end up hearing a song that could literally be a guitarist playing with one finger or playing one or two chords, and it could end up being a song that could completely change your approach in the way to play. I mean, think about this. For all the great things that Eric Clapton played with Cream, and yet he could hear the band do things the way they did, and it completely changed the way that he saw music at that time. Ocean Boulevard wouldn't exist, if it wasn't for that sort of influence, that different perspective, that unique imprint. And so we should have an environment, regardless if it's an open mic or if it's online or whatnot. That's why I love positive open mics, even if they're virtual open mics. Like the Music Makers virtual open mic that happens on the third Monday of the month. You can check out Music Makers virtual open mic on Facebook. Andy Phillips hosts a great open mic. And he does an in-person one in Peekskill at the Bean Runner Cafe in Peekskill, New York. What I love about those open mics is that they're so supportive. Anybody can come in there playing any type of music with any type of a level of acumen, and yet they come into that environment and it's not judgmental. It allows for the space for the artist to express themselves as they can and as they wish, and we should foster that environment for everybody. It's gotten to the point where it's like, even if I see posts about, oh, this guitarist hates this guitarist, like I don't even watch those videos anymore because it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, this guitarist who has many fans and this guitarist who has many fans could hate that guitarist, and yet that doesn't change the number of people that are still touched by the music this one makes, or that one for that matter. So let's be kind, and let's support one another in this journey of expression, and let's share in our love for the gift of music, regardless if you can play a blistering solo or whether you're up there playing tambourine. It doesn't matter. As long as people can feel what you're making, as long as you're making that connection with somebody in the audience, it could change their lives. Whether they end up being musicians themselves or whether they end up doing some other endeavor. Maybe they wake up in the morning and they play your song and it pumps them up and they're able to go to work and take care of the bills and do what they have to do. Music can mean something to so many people in so many ways. So let's just be supportive to one another.